Welcome to the Big Meat Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. I want to start things off the show maybe on a little bit more of a somber note. I want to send thoughts and prayers up to East Lansing, Michigan. Terrible shooting went on last night. Haven't really read a lot of the news, but it's very sad situation, and was something heavy on my mind, and I wanted to be sure to say something about that to start off the show. Um, we are now here in our 5-day a week rollout for this show. Those of you who have followed my podcasting for a while will laugh and say, well, you say that all the time, that you're going to do all of these extra shows, and then lo and behold, life happens and you don't. Well, God willing, I'm going to be doing a lot more shows, as I said, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, barring some unforeseen circumstances or some travel or things of that nature. But three recorded, 2 live, unless we'll see what happens. I think as we build up some continuity, more and more people will tune in. I know that Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning and Buckeye Weekly Podcast here on the channel have always been much more regular and get a lot more views because of that predictability of when the show is on. So we want to get this up to be the 3rd show that is at least 5 days a week, and be able to go from there. So let me start off by saying, if you're checking us out here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, give us a thumbs up. All of that good stuff helps us out as we're kind of going through some of our hellos with people. So many regulars that I know. I'll kind of recycle through them here. Hello to Ben Higgins, and to JJ, and to superfan El Suzabo, Jordan Kapler. With condolences to all at Michigan State as well. I agree. And Wingman Ted. It's kind of been a crazy week with a lot of things going on. I'm not turning this into a news show, so to speak. I know that everybody has their own opinions on what is happening in the news, but balloons in the air and terrible train derailment out in eastern Ohio, and we don't even know what the fallout is going to be from that and everything else. Hello to Roger Smith. I mean, it's just get afraid to turn on the television news or to log into the news websites or whatever, just because it just seems that there's so much bad going on. And that's why I am so happy that I cover sports. And that's, and I think that's the reason why so many people find, refuge in following sports, because it is a distraction from everything that is going on in the world today. And we're sitting in a kind of a unique period of time right now. Football is over. The NFL capped off on Sunday with the Super Bowl game, with the Chiefs winning 38-35 over the Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, Mark Givler. We have one of the 2 spring leagues, I guess, starting up this next week. I think it's the XFL, with the USFL starting in April, if I remember right. Jordan Kapler jumping in. East Palestine's only 20 minutes from where I grew up, and his parents still live there. Well, God bless. Prayers sent. Jordan. Again, I read some things on Twitter, and I know that Twitter is about as reliable as Wikipedia. A lot of times, it just depends on who's framing news out there. But it sounds like we don't know how bad things are going to be for quite some time in terms of chemicals getting into the rivers and what that's going to mean. So, definitely very scary times, and I hope that your parents are doing okay with everything that is going on. Jordan, also, if anyone is near that area, my home is open to you and yours up here in Michigan. Very, very nice. Jordan and I have sparred a little bit this year, because 23 is the year of Jordan and Noon having their tiff, apparently, which I never agreed to this, but Jordan did. So, we've had a little fun with it, but Jordan's a good dude. So, there you go. A lot of, but again, just so much craziness out there. I probably look at about 4 or 5 websites a day, and that's about it. And the first being BuckeyeHuddle.com, because That's where I work. And also because it's a fantastic site. If you're not a member yet, be sure to give us a look at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We have a great annual option, but if you're not so sure, just check us out on the monthly option. Just check us out there for less than the price of a crummy old delivery pizza. You can get all the great news from Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman, Tony Gerdeman, Tom Orr, all of our analysts with Ross Fulton, uh, Mike Pettit, Justin Whitlatch, and then of course little old me as well. So give it a look. But into the plug there. But we're getting closer to the start of spring football, and that's what I'm excited about. If you follow social media, which I've already sat there and called Wikipedia, Ohio State football's main account has been putting out some pictures from winter conditioning, and this is going to be a very interesting setup for what we're going to see going into this spring. Let me get here with Philip Pulio. Buckeye Huddle is a great forum to spend all your free time. Yes, I've seen our friend from New Jersey on there quite a bit. We've talked about jug handles. I've teased about full service gas. It's a great place to be. We have a lot of great and diverse posters from all over not only all over the country, but from all over the world. Not everybody who's a member posts. A lot of people like to lurk, which I get. There are times that I get on the board. I'm like, I don't know if I have anything to add, but it's my job, so I better add something. So I do what I can. But thank you for the good words there, Philip. But getting back into spring football, I know what everybody's biggest question is going to be. I mean, even more so than the defense, and it's going to be who's going to be the quarterback, who is going to emerge. Ryan Day came out and said that he would like to have a quarterback decision by the end of spring. Is that just empty words? Is that real? Does that mean he's going to have a decision? He's going to keep it to himself? Is he going to share it with the players? I think if you see somebody coming out of spring hitting the portal, we probably know. I don't know if there's a huge upside in announcing anything at this point. It might be best for Ryan Day to have an idea, just so you can kind of tailor a little bit of the offense to what it is that your quarterback does well. And it's not that Kyle McCord and Devin Brown are just, Joe Germain and Stanley Jackson in terms of what their abilities are, with Joe Germain being the pocket passer who is not going to run whatsoever, and Stanley Jackson being much more of the dual threat guy. And speaking of Stanley Jackson, congratulations to him. Named the new head coach, the new football head coach at Westerville North High School. Was going to try and work that in there, but that one worked out pretty well. Jordan Kapler asking, this is the first real open quarterback competition since when? I don't know. How far back are we going now at this point? Was there really a quarterback competition coming out of 14 with, CJ, or with Cardale Jones leading Ohio State in those 3 games to the national championship, JT Barrett getting the Buckeyes all the way up to that point? Was that really an open competition? Was that you got to ride with Cardale Jones at that point because he got you there? And are you going to really bench a national championship winning quarterback? We can sit there. I mean, it's been a while. I mean, do we want to sit there? Did Terrell Pryor really have a chance to start day one as a true freshman? We obviously know kind of what happened. He kind of got thrust into the situation when he did. I'd have to think about that one for a little bit. Let me hit a couple more hellos. Sage, Ohio. Hello, Buckeyes. Ben Higgins. I'll start the Buckeye questions. Is there a safety-driven is a safety-driven defense a good thing? I don't see many other teams with 3 starting safeties, NFL included. I'm going to star that one. We'll get back to that one in a second. Todd Monken to the Ravens. I just had posted that over at Buckeye Huddle. I saw it on social from the Ravens official account, so that's as official as it gets. It'd be interesting to see what UGA does. For those of you who don't know, Todd Monken is the UGA, or was the UGA offensive coordinator. He is now going to the Ravens. There had been some talk that he really wanted to get back to the league. Apparently, he turned down Tampa Bay. I don't follow that one that closely, but he is going to the Ravens now. So does UGA dip back into the pros to find its new OC? Where do things go from there? Todd Monken certainly had a lot of positives I've talked to some people around UGA who kind of said that there was a little bit of a stubbornness to him as well, and that he would get really locked down on doing certain things, or would get bored with things and do certain things that they didn't like. But I think you're going to run into that with anybody. I don't think we've ever seen anybody call a perfect game. I mean, it isn't there. It doesn't happen. It's funny. You sit there and you fill out these surveys. I just had like the pest service, not Orkin, but one of the other ones, come in and spray around the house yesterday. And the text like, please give me all tens. I'm like, well, in that type of situation, yes, I'll give you all tens, because I know that your job security and probably bonuses are all tied into that. But is anything truly a 10? I mean, is truly anything, oh, well, it couldn't be any better? Well, yeah, I guess it could be better. So I'll be curious with that. Yeah, it is a big deal for UGA. I mean, yeah, you don't want to lose a coordinator and just sit there and it be kind of an unknown. I mean, the good news is that the defense is on lockdown as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach there, and with whatever they're going to do there, it's Kirby's system, and it's kind of a little bit more of a plug and play. But going into a season with a quarterback competition at UGA, Stetson Bennett is like 39 years old, has no more eligibility left. Um, and now you're having to sit there and look for a coordinator, and that's too big of a hire to sit there and just have something set up immediately. Now, I'm sure UGA knew that Monken was looking, and I'm sure UGA has a list. And maybe Monken was really forthcoming with them and said, look, I am not going to be here in 23. So you should probably make some plans. So maybe things can be expedited, but it would sound like they would probably go into spring ball not knowing. I don't know. I don't know how quickly that this can come together. The good news is that if they're going to the NFL ranks, and that's an if, that's a big if they go to the NFL ranks, the NFL season is done. So you're not, if you want to hire somebody from Philly or Kansas City, you're not having to sit there and wait for them to finish their seasons. The seasons are done. But that will be a hire that I will keep an eye on, because as long as Ohio State is competing against the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world, all of this is very cause and effect. And you have to kind of keep an eye on what it is your opponents are doing. So you got to go from there. But let me get back to Ben's comment here about a safety driven defense. Is it a good thing? I think it can be a good thing. The truth of the matter is that we sit there and you talk about the NFL, we see a lot more 3-4 in the NFL than we see in college. I mean, there are your 3-4 teams. Jim Leonard, when he was at Wisconsin, ran 3-4, just right off of the top of my head. We see a lot of teams that are very multiple in terms of their looks. I mean, we've seen Ohio State run 3-4, 4-4 through the years. I mean, things have all been there. I mean, base for years and years and years though was 4-3, and now it's 4-2-5 with this safety driven defense. I think you're as good as the safeties that you have. I mean, if you have three safeties out there that can get these things done, if you have your adjuster and you have your strong and you have your, I don't remember all the cute names for these things, your bandit or whatever, it'll all work out, because again, you still have 11 guys out there on the defense. It's not like it's so exotic that you're trying to do things with 10, or if you're Ohio State special teams trying to do things with 12. But all joking aside, I think it can work, because if you have somebody out there that is just a more mobile linebacker, so to speak. I mean, if you sit there and Sonny Styles is your third safety, is it really that different than having a traditional 4-3 just with where one of your linebackers is lined up? I mean, let's remember Pete Werner was a linebacker, but he was also kind of a safety, and we had this whole thing, whoa, the bullet's going to do this, the bullet's going to do that. Well, we never saw the bullet. And because of that, Ohio State ended up having a postseason MVP transfer out with Brendan White, and Pete Werner's gone on and put together a nice little career so far with the New Orleans Saints, where all Buckeyes go to flourish, apparently. So I wouldn't get so much caught into the fact that I'm not seeing it elsewhere. I think that the issue is as long as you have the Jimmies and Joes to be able to pull it off. And even more importantly, I think that as long as you don't sit there and throw the baby out with the bathwater and get too aggressive and allow these huge hits. So I think that if anything, it's more of a matter of, for when we're looking at the structure of Ohio State's defense and how defense is called, maybe a little bit less zero blitz, maybe a little bit less unfavorable matchups for the sake of trying to get pressure when that pressure hasn't really been getting home. It's all interconnected. I think if the Ohio State defensive line plays better, that speeds things up and you're not going to see as much. But I don't care how many safeties or how many corners or how many linebackers. I mean, I guess if you had like 12 of each, it would help. But I don't care how many of you have. If you sit there and you're sending extra rushers and you don't get home, a competent quarterback is going to be able to punish you. Maybe not all the time, but will be able to punish you. I mean, let's remember, it's not as if Stetson Bennett torched Ohio State for 60 minutes. That wasn't the case. It was not as if J.J. McCarthy torched Ohio State for 60 minutes. The problem is it's the 3, the 4, the 5 big plays. That needs to be the none, the one, the none big plays. And then that's probably not going to happen. I mean, busts happen a lot. I mean, it is what it is. And when CJ Stroud would look off a safety and somebody would fall down or whatever, and he would hit Emeka Egbuka for like a 65-yard touchdown. Oh, that was a great play. Well, there was probably a bust in the defense as well. And that's, that deals with scheming and execution and everything else. So I don't necessarily, I'm going to get to Ben's follow up here. I don't necessarily have an issue with that type of defense. I just think that you have to have the cats to do it. And Ben says, I agree. The DL really needs to step it up. I think that's been our biggest problem on defense. The line isn't getting home to the quarterback enough. Absolutely. And is that a situation of where, I mean, Larry Johnson is the GOAT. I mean, let's get that out there. I want to just preface anything I say by saying Team Larry Johnson. But I am not a fan of the rotation. I'm not a fan of the rotation. I think that you do need to play some dudes, but I don't think that you need to keep JT Tuimoloau on the bench for half the snaps. I don't like that. I think that you need to have your difference makers out there. And there certainly were enough 3rd and 6s out there last year where I would look at who was out there and I'm like, I don't know if that is their best combination. I don't know if, and that's a very careful way of me not being critical of any one player because I don't play that game. But it's not about just the individual player. It's about who the 4 guys are that you have out there. If you've got the 4 linemen, this end may work better with this 3 tech because of just how some things are. And I really was not a big fan of the rotation that we saw there. Now, does that mean that if in a perfect world and Zach Harrison and JT and Jack Sawyer and Tyleik Williams were seeing 85% of the snaps that things would have been different? I can't say that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball to be able to go back and figure that out, but I don't think it could have been any worse in terms of maybe some lack of pressure. So a lot of things that are going to have to be done in the lab. And I think that, I think one of the things when you look at a coach like Jim Knowles, who's been doing this as long as he has, they're a constant student of the game, and they realize that just because they think that something is, I don't know, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but infallible. I mean, this is what works. Well, you have to adjust to the personnel that you have. And I think that this is going to be a big year because let's remember Jim Knowles came in and took over a defense that was largely the defense from the year before in terms of personnel. Save Tanner McAllister, bringing him in. Save that you had a couple of different cornerbacks out there, but even with that, you didn't have enough cornerbacks, and people were hurt all the time, and probably playing at a much lower percent than you would like, but you had to get somebody out there. So I think that there's a lot of things that have to be looked at there, and I think that's That's what's going to be important here in the winter as they kind of go through and look at their personnel. And then when you get into the spring and you see what you have, and let's not forget too that going to be a lot of different names and faces out there because of injuries and guys that are going to be held out either to have things cleaned up or because they're, I know that the what was it, the 2000 rep club that Urban Meyer had. I know it's a different regime now, so things might be, a little different. But if you've done this for 3 years, 4 years, you may not need as many snaps as the young guy will. So we'll kind of see. But let me get back to some of the questions here as we're going along. Yakov, Kevin, I'm hoping someone signs you to a 9-figure apparel deal. I'm all for it. I mean, I do fancy the Tommy Bahama stuff, but I haven't bought anything in a while. I haven't had any money. I would be fine with a 7-figure apparel deal, a 9-figure apparel deal. I make you this promise. If Tommy Bahama or somebody comes out there and inks me to that deal, I will still do my show. I will do it from an island resort somewhere, but I will still do my show. And I would be a fantastic apparel deal guy. I promise you that. I promise you that. Let me keep going here. Going back a little bit because we've missed a couple as I was yammering on and on. Flow grown. I feel like fans are mixed on quarterback next year, but if McCord starts, Brown would probably stay. I would think so. But let me play devil's advocate. I've come out and said that I think that Brown wins the job. That is based on very little knowledge, but a lot of promise type of prediction here in mid-February 2023. Get me out of spring and I may feel differently. If you start McCord, Brown probably does stick around another year because the thought would be McCord plays a year and then moves on. If McCord wants to go to the league, if any quarterback wants to go to the league, I mean, the numbers are there that you need to have more than 10 starts, 12 starts, 15 starts. You need to be a multi-year starter. I think you need to go through that second season as the starter. So if McCord wins, does he stay for 2 years, or does he sit there and see where his clock is at and it's like, well, it's time for me to go? Now, if you have Brown, he would be you have quote unquote club control, and nobody really has club control with the portal these days. But you have club control over him for 2 years. So you do get your 2-year starter. And while a 2-year starter gets the benefits of that second year starting and more reps and going through a whole offseason as the known starter, et cetera, it certainly helps the club too, to have continuity at the position for 2 seasons. So, I don't know. I could make the argument either way. I mean, yes, the math, the caponomics seem to work with McCord in 23 and Brown in 24. But what if they come out of camp equal? What if they come out of camp, one of them is a 93 and one of them is a 92? If McCord is the 93, and Brown's the 92, well, you got to start the better guy, right? Yeah, I guess. If McCord is the 92 and Brown is the 93, do you sit there and do you look at it in the situation and say, well, they're so close, we should probably start the upperclassmen to make the math work? Maybe. I don't know. But, it's complicated. And I think ultimately we could talk about this frontwards, backwards, sideways, upside down, whatever. It's all going to matter what happens on that field during the spring and likely into the fall. I'm very skeptical that a decision can be made, and that's not calling Ryan Day's bluff on this or anything else. I just think that you've got 2 quarterbacks that have very little real world experience at the position. Sure, McCord's got a ton of practice experience. Brown has less, but has a bunch of practice experience. Devin Brown really didn't get to attempt a pass. Kyle McCord had a start against Akron in 21. Yeah, 21, and threw some passes in like some garbage time. But neither of these guys have a ton of experience. I think that the biggest thing is going to be a situation of where you need to make sure that if it's McCord and then Brown is his understudy, that both of them see some time within the offense. It's all well and good to say, well, you've played 3.5 quarters. We're now going to bring in the two. And then when he sits there and he hands it off onto the 5 of Dallin Hayden, who just runs it, and that's all they're doing, or TC Caffey or whoever, is that quarterback getting any real experience? Well, he had 106 snaps last year. BFD. I mean, he didn't throw a pass. He wasn't running the Ohio State offense. I mean, it's not a ton of experience. Now, I understand too, the goal is to win games. And I can also hear the argument being made, whoever Ohio State's starting quarterback is hasn't played a lot of football, so we've got to get him a lot of football. But you very well could be in this situation again going into 24, a year where the world kind of changes, a year where USC and UCLA join the Big Ten Conference, a year where you go to a 12-team playoff, and probably some other moves that we haven't even seen yet in terms of where things stand. And no, that's not me saying that Big Ten expansion is going to suddenly ramp up. Big Ten doesn't even have a commissioner at this point in my book, with Kevin Warren on his way out. But a lot of things there. And again, when I'm self-producing, I sometimes get stuck on a point, and now I'm going to have like 70 questions to get to. But Flowgrown and others, that's kind of where I am at the position. But let me jump down and see what else we've got. Let me mark this, and I'll try to not miss any other questions. Sage, Ohio, kind of, I think it's something that's additive to that. It's turning into a blessing that Notre Dame is game 4. Yeah, but game 1 is at Indiana. And okay, Indiana has not been very good the last year or so, year plus. But the game's at Bloomington. It's a quarterback who has not played. If it's Brown, it's no starts. If it's McCord, it's 1 start, and that was a start at home against a MAC team, a bad MAC team at that point. There's going to be some challenges in that game 1. But with that being said, I think it is for the best that Notre Dame, which is also a road game, is game 4. You have the opportunity to have hopefully 3 starts under your belt before you have to go to South Bend and go against a team that certainly improved as the year went on. I still think that in a vacuum, Ohio State is significantly much more talented than Notre Dame, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how things work out. So, we'll kind of see. And then Sage jumps in, says both quarterbacks will play at Indiana. What I don't want to see happen, though, is the Jim Harbaugh situation with Michigan, with McCarthy and with McNamara, and this pseudo competition of, okay, this game belongs to this quarterback and this game belongs to that quarterback, and we'll make a decision, because all things aren't equal. What are Ohio State's other non-league games? They've got Youngstown State and Western Kentucky, I think it is. Youngstown State and its 53 scholarship players versus Western Kentucky and its 85 scholarship players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those aren't equal games. So you can't sit there and play those 2 games and say this belongs to player A and this belongs to player B and be able to sit there and say it's truly apples and apples. It might be apples and mangoes or something. They're both fruits, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same situation. So, and that was the thing at Michigan. And yes, I mean, they had, what was it, Hawaii and UConn or whatever. I don't even remember that terrible schedule. But UConn ended up becoming bowl eligible. Hawaii was just terrible. So it's not, and I don't remember who was tasked with each game. But with that being said, I just don't think it's equal. But to Sage's point, yeah, I think you have to play both quarterbacks at that point. But you certainly have to have somebody who trots out there for the first offensive series. And we certainly don't want to see a situation where it's like you play 2 series and you play 2 series and you play 2 series and you play 2 series. Because as the old saying goes, if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got no quarterbacks. So, you gotta make a decision, but I think you need to make sure that you bring your number 2 along, so you quit seeing these situations of where you're going sight unseen kind of into a season. Now, it worked out fine with CJ Stroud, but admit it, there are a couple of you out there that were like, I don't know if that's the right guy. I think they should be starting McCord. they should be starting Kyle McCord here. CJ Stroud isn't even the right guy. I mean, even through the Akron game, I was still hearing that from some people. And then CJ Stroud finally stopped throwing high and stopped throwing low, and slowed down, and went on to probably be the most accurate passer I've ever seen at Ohio State. And I've seen some great quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, the late Dwayne Haskins was a fantastic arm. Justin Fields may be the best overall, all-around quarterback I've seen in this new era of college football. I mean, Troy Smith and his Heisman campaign was fantastic. I've also seen some substandard quarterbacks. 51 years old, and I'll admit I wasn't watching Ohio State when I was 10, 11 years old. I was out on the West Coast, but I certainly have seen some. I've seen some quarterbacks at Ohio State that maybe were par for the course back in the day, but we're in a whole new world in quarterbacking, and that's why I'm not concerned about 24 recruiting with the decommitment of Dylan Raiola. They're going to be people will be like, stop mentioning that name. I don't want to talk about him anymore. Well, I'm not going to talk about him much. I'm just going to say that Ohio State's going to be fine as long as Ohio State has Ryan Day as head coach, and Corey Dennis to a certain extent at quarterback coach, and now Brian Hartline at OC. And Brian Hartline now will be able to be more involved in all offensive recruiting. They're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. I look at Lincoln Kienholz as kind of the player that could end up having huge returns, or maybe not. We don't know a lot about him in terms of him playing in South Dakota and not even playing like Division I or whatever their largest classification is there. But I think they're going to be just fine in 24, and they're going to be just fine at quarterback. So let me back up and see what else I can find, because I always feel bad when I miss questions, but you get one that's in my wheelhouse. I'm going to talk about it. Jordan, should Jack Sawyer bulk up and become a true defensive end or stay in the jack position? Jack Sawyer already, I knew him in high school because he's from Pickerington. I live in Pickerington. Certainly saw him go through the camp circuits, everything else. I think I bumped into him once in town. I mean, like when he was still a recruit. I mean, he doesn't live in Pickerington anymore. I mean, his family may, but he lives on campus. But he's already a big guy. I don't know if I sit there and see playing him as like a strong side defensive end as any benefit at this point. I think that they still need to, this Jack Leo position. The Jack position has to morph into the Leo, the king of the jungle, or however Jim Knowles put it. I think we need to see some more definition of what the position is. But I think he's more unique as the Jack Leo if we know what the Jack Leo is. And they don't have to explain it to me. I think they just have to have something of where they feel comfortable enough in the position to have him out there. And you bulk up Sawyer a little bit more. His frame can certainly take it. He is a big kid. But does he suddenly become this freak of a player when he's just another big defensive end? And I'm not sure about that. I mean, sometimes, you got to let a unicorn be a unicorn, and they haven't. I mean, they've allowed him to be a unicorn at points, but I don't know if he's necessarily been there. So I think this is going to be a huge year for Jack Sawyer, if we're being honest. And I know I said that last year for Zach Harrison, and I've seen Zach Harrison mocked into the second round on multiple NFL draft boards. So could we be seeing a Baron Browning situation of where a guy didn't necessarily get put in the right situation or whatever reason, who goes off to the NFL and blows up? I don't know. I mean, I still a little salty that Baron Browning didn't have a better run at Ohio State. I mean, and he played well, but I think that there were a lot of things that could have been done differently with him. But in short, I think you keep him at the jack position, but we need to have some clear guardrails of what the jack position is. Doug says having Jack at the jack is a waste of his abilities, and he wasn't effective in it. So see, people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. And I just don't know if having him as a bulked up end. I mean, I guess you could still have him as like as a rush end, a true edge. and that would be fine. But I think that some of it is that, again, I just didn't like the rotations. I didn't like some of the groupings I saw out there. I think that all needs to be really evaluated. And again, who am I to tell Larry Johnson how to do his job? Well, I am Kevin Noon, host of the Big Me Kickoff here on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle and all your favorite podcasting channels. But I don't have a lot of coaching experience, so what the hell do I know? Let me keep scrolling through, and it looks like I'm falling behind. Wingman Ted, do you think we'll ever see camps just for guys in the portal, similar to how we recruit high school students? I hope not. I hope not, because the thing is that so much is going on at that point. Are you going to have a portal camp while the top 4 teams or the top 12 teams are playing in the college football playoff structure and bowl games are going on? Are you going to sit there and push it to right after that? I mean, how are you going to do evals from that? I mean, I know that college staffs are huge, and you certainly could sit there and task one person to go to these camps, but I don't know. That feels a little too employee driven to me. That, okay, well, like, everybody is an employee of the NC2A at this point, and we're going to have this job fair to sit there and find these guys these new homes. And the truth of the matter is where's the cutoff? Oh, sorry, this one is only for players who are like legit D1A type guys. So you coming from D3, no. I mean, if anywhere that needs to be that, I think it's D3, D2. I think those are the guys, because we're seeing so many guys go into the portal and not coming out the other end. And that's always been the biggest concern I've had about the portal is, you get a player who's from the sticks, and has nobody in his family has made it further than high school, or somebody who grew up in very rough circumstances. And not only is he the first guy to get through high school, he's the first guy with an opportunity in college, and he gets this bad advice to go into the portal. And then 2 years in, 1 year into his journey, it hits a brick wall, and then he doesn't have a scholarship anywhere. I mean, if we're talking about player welfare and things that are best for the players, that sounds horrible. I mean, that's terrible. So I don't know, but I don't know if I'm a big fan of the idea of camps, at least not on the 1A level. I think it's a distraction. I'm sorry, FBS. I mean, it's a big distraction, and I don't know if that's the case. I mean, how do you run it? I mean, you're not going to sit there and there's not like NC2A coaches that can come out there and run this situation, run this camp. And it's not going to be as if in college football with 131 FBS teams that everybody's going to agree with, okay, well, we're cool with these 10 coaches handling it. Well, are those 10 coaches they're going to have their hands all over these kids in terms of working with them? Are they going to have an unfair advantage in terms of building relationships with them? So these are just thoughts off of the top of my head. Not necessarily well constructed, just things I'm thinking of. But an interesting point, an interesting question, an interesting proposition. As of now, I'm not in favor of it. Now, maybe somebody could structure something. I'm like, oh, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. But at this point, I just think it's a huge distraction. Let me keep going here. Do we have data on how our snap counts for backups compared to other programs like Alabama, UGA, etc.? Let me look into that one. Pro Football Focus does a lot of snap count numbers and everything else. I could probably do it easy just going through some of the stats in terms of skill positions, but you're not going to know for a lot of things, because if you're not recording stats, you're not necessarily showing up on a stat sheet. So that's more of a PFF type thing. I don't have an account to PFF at the moment. Let me look into that one, because I don't know. I think one of the issues you run into is when you are a very good team and you're trying to you're winning games, you're trying to win games, you're trying to get your guys up for awards, even if you're not admitting that. You're trying to sit there and make a statement in how you win. Maybe you don't get some of your guys, especially on offense. I think it's probably a little bit more of an issue running what it is that you do. I think we see 2s and 3s on defense worked out there a lot more because they can still run. You're still running your team's defense. You don't come out in the fourth quarter and clear the bench, so to speak, and just run a student body left, student body right defense. You got to run your defense. So you've got a benefit of you're playing actual real football as opposed to offensive players who are coming out and it's like, well, we don't want to score 90 on this team, so we better slow it down. But let me look into that one. Filipulio, is the next season our last shot at an easier path to the playoff with SC and UCLA coming in? Well, I mean, it's certainly on the surface, yeah. I mean, if you're going against 14 teams and really you're just going against 2.5 teams, in my opinion. I mean, sorry, not sorry. You're going against Michigan, Penn State, and maybe somebody else emerges as sort of a challenger. I mean, of course, under Urban Meyer, Ohio State wasn't dropping those big games. It was dropping Iowa and Purdue. But you add 2 more teams out there where you're going to have to deal with travel considerations and everything else. And how does that mess up numbers? And I'm assuming they're going to go divisionless once you bring those 2 teams in and everything. You're not playing more league games, but you're certainly playing a little bit of a diversified schedule because of how things are going to work out. You're not going to sit there and know, okay, you got Rutgers and Maryland every year because they're in the Big Ten East with you. And Maryland is up and down somewhat. Rutgers is Rutgers. It is going to be more difficult, but I will say this: you also going to a 12-team playoff. So for the challenges you get of USC and UCLA coming in and how that might muddy the waters, you go from 4 slots to 12 slots. And while certain slots are going to be locked down based on what the agreement is, there's still going to be more at-large spots, as in there will be at-large spots. There, Ohio State did get quote unquote an at-large spot last year, not winning the Big Ten, but still getting into the playoff. But there's going to be more opportunity. So I think it's a wash. I think that there will be some challenges for all Big Ten teams starting next year in terms of you're not yearly charting what SC and UCLA are doing. You're not watching them every week in crossover film. It wouldn't surprise me if you task somebody you put on their to-do list. You're kind of in charge of advanced scouting these 2 teams. Granted, at SC, they're not going to have Caleb Williams in 24, but you can still get some tendencies. You can still see what the offense likes to do. You can still see that Alex Grinch isn't getting it done. You can do the same with UCLA. I guarantee you that SC and UCLA probably are going to have some bodies tasked with getting familiar with the Big Ten. So that's my thought on that one. Wingman Ted, impressed with Caden Curry at times. I'd like to see him as the Jack Leo, let Sawyer do natural pass rush things. I like Caden Curry a lot. I mean, it's surprising that you see him play and you think that he's a lot taller than he is, and he's just not all that tall, but he's somebody who just has a motor and gets to it. Somebody I'd like to see take a big step forward this year, be given the opportunity to take that step forward. There's going to be a lot of open spots in those rotations. Zach Harrison's gone, obviously. I mean, you lose Tyler Friday, JJB. I mean, there are a lot of bodies that are going to be gone. So, why not Caden Curry? I want to see some of the younger guys, do that, step up too. Hero Canoe, Kenyatta Jackson. You've got some guys, Omari Abor. So you got, we'll see. We'll see with what happens there. But that's an interesting view on there. I agree, Wingman Ted. You need to do that. Kay Simon agrees. We're getting closer to caught up. Here we go with Kay Simon, hoping the O-line comes together. Would love to see some push in the run game. I think that, I think that you have a good opportunity here because you're rebuilding the line in a lot of ways. I mean, you're replacing your tackles, you're replacing your center. I think that this is going to be a very pivotal year for Justin Fry. You bring in Justin Fry. He's involved in your run game. I guess he's still the run game coordinator. I never remember if it's him or if it's Tony Alford, but I think that anybody who just pops in the tape casually and looks at Ohio State's run game could see, it was very inconsistent. There were a lot of times that the line was fantastic at pass blocking. The run blocking was not consistent. So who will fill out those spots? That's going to be the question. Is Vic Cutler going to be your center? Do you bring him in and put him there? That allows you to keep Matt Jones at the one guard position. Um, I think there are going to be a lot of questions with O-line. I think that's going to be something you're going to hear us talk about a lot in spring practice. Every time we see a different configuration at whatever amount of practice we get to go and see, there will be probably a podcast and a written article about it, because that is one of those big questions. Okay, we want to talk about the defense not giving up the big plays. Okay, we need to see who's going to be the quarterback. Oh, but we also need to see the offensive line, because Ohio State's offensive line largely played well, but when it got up into those talent equated type of games, the run was not necessarily there. And Georgia, you kind of just need to throw Georgia off the board. Georgia shut everybody down running the ball. But you have to be able to run against Michigan. You have to be able to run the ball against Michigan, period. And it would also help if Ohio State had healthy running backs against Michigan, looking at 22. But you cannot go in and just pass them to death. It's just not going to happen. You have to be more balanced. So yes, you have to have something a little bit more than what we saw. And I think the potential's there. And I'm a big Justin Fry fan. I think he's going to be able to get Ohio State's running game back to where it needs to be. Now, I don't think Ohio State needs to run for 300 yards a game on the regular, but I think Ohio State needs to have a solid run in its pocket, knowing that, if this is still the Ryan Day offense, even if it's Brian Hartline calling it, it's going to be a little bit more tilted toward pass, and that's fine. We're not that far removed from, oh my God, I wish Ohio State could complete a forward pass for the love of God, to now it's like, I wish Ohio State could sit there and get a 5-yard run when it needs to on a big play. So, and I gotta text my wife something. Oh, she's bugging me about something. Sorry, total loss of thought. She needed an answer on something immediately and totally lost my mind. But yes, the O-line needs to step up for sure. El Suzabo is going to miss CJ Stroud. I don't think that people are going to realize just how meaningful, just how great he was until he's gone. And that doesn't mean that, oh, just wait till they have their first clunker of a quarterback that you're going to realize it. I think it's just going to be a matter of where your recency bias goes away and you're able to look at everything and not focus on, well, you didn't beat Michigan, you didn't win a Big Ten title, you didn't win a natty. Fine. All of that's there. All of those are goals. All of those should be the standard. This is Ohio State football we're talking about. Those should be the standard. I'm not dismissing that, but I think you can sit there and pull all of that away and still look at everything that CJ Stroud did. Yes, CJ was not a prolific runner, but when you look at what he did against Georgia, he left it all out there. He left it all out on the field. And I'm very happy for his legacy that we saw that there. Now, winning the game would have been much better for his legacy, but the fact that he did everything, short of driving the team bus. And again, we're not going to get into the, Ohio State was wronged here, Ohio State was wronged there. Don't put yourself in a position to where one play matters. Losing Marvin Harrison was more than that. That was, you lost him for a good portion of the game, and they didn't have any answer there. Losing Cade Stover was a big situation. He was so important in so many of their of their plays in terms of what he was able to do, and that's not taking anything away from Mitch Rossi or Joe Royer, who got out there a little bit, or any of these guys. But starters are starters for a reason. But on the flip side, Georgia dealt with some injuries too. They lost Darnell Washington. They lost him for the game. They kept losing linebackers. I mean, it was a battle of attrition out there. But I think that once we get a couple years out, the prevailing beliefs on CJ Stroud will be he was really good. I think that the prevailing thoughts on the 21 and the 22 teams were those are another couple teams that had national championship potential who came up short. And, I get it. Ohio State nobody's winning more games than Ohio State. Over the last 10 years, I saw a tweet about this. Ohio State won like the third most games, but in the last 10 years has one national championship. And that's tough to stomach, but it takes a little bit of luck too. It takes a little bit of luck with a blank load of talent to be able to win a national championship. And Ohio State, for whatever reason, has just been cursed a couple of times. I don't get it, but it is what it is. Let's keep going through here. Phil Pulio, we all know Bosman was the best quarterback Ohio State ever had. I would ban you for 5 minutes, but I like you too much. But stop it. He did build a fence. I was at the game at Nebraska. Kyle Rowland, who's with the Toledo Blade, was working for me at that point over at Buckeye Grove. And at the half, he comes up to me. He's like, I've already pretty much written my story. I'm like, dude, shut up. You're going to ruin it for them. And lo and behold, Ohio State loses the game. So I will always remember that. El Suzaba, I haven't missed a single snap of OSU football since 76. Yeah, I'm old. 76. The 76 season, I was 4 and turned 5 midway through it. I really hadn't gotten into football yet. I picked up baseball at a very early age. I think that I probably seen every snap, or at least listened on the radio to Ohio State since 1988 for me, probably. I did have to listen to the radio because I moved away from Columbus to Dallas in 99, and I had moved into an apartment, and the cable company hadn't come to get me set up yet, and I found a way somehow to get it on the radio. And I remember sitting in the apartment, and my mom had come over, and she was helping me unpack, and I was listening to the game on the radio. And again, we're talking 1999, wasn't one of the best teams, and I just remember dropping a lot of F-bombs at that point. Sage Ohio says, don't you dismiss Belisari. You guys. Let me keep going here. Matthew Miller, quarterback Air Noland. I mean, he's somebody they're certainly looking at. But see in camp, we need to see some of these guys in camp, I think. I mean, Ohio State will probably find a way during the evaluation period to get down and see some of these guys throw, but you need to see what these guys can do. I mean, as somebody who worked for a company that did star ratings for a very long time, star ratings are all well and good, but you better be able to back it up. And the way that you can prove any of that is by throwing the ball and being seen. So it'll be interesting to see who comes to visit for camp, which 24 quarterbacks are going to do that. A lot of these guys already have all these big offers, and sometimes you run into guys who are like, I'm good. I don't want to camp. But I think if you really want Ohio State to take you seriously, I think you need to find a way to get into Columbus here in, when do they do the camps? April, May, something like that. I think that's going to be incredibly important. I think it's May to do that, because also you need to show Ohio State how interested you are. And let's also remember too that it's not every year that we sit there and we see 30 quarterbacks, 30 upper cut quarterbacks. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from any of the kids that come there that I'm not talking about, but you see them come in. It's like, all right, well, we know who's there, and then we never hear about them again. And, I certainly can go through a lot of those names, and some of them commit elsewhere, and it just never happens. But, I don't know. But, I mean, I've gone in, I've watched Aaron Nolan's tape. I mean, he certainly looks good to me. There's They're going after the kid the Justin Sayin who's committed to Alabama. I mean, obviously, you go and you try and rekindle things with Colin Hurley, who's committed to LSU. Colin Hurley was a big fan of Ohio State. He was a kid who did recruiting right. These are the 4 or 5 schools that I'm really interested in. And yes, I'm going to sit there and report all these offers that I get or whatever, but I know who I'm interested in. And he picked from that list. And you have to appreciate that type of approach because you have your game players out there. Colin Hurley, not a game player. Ohio State really would like to get back involved there. I think Colin Hurley is tremendous. I think he is a tremendous quarterback. And then, of course, we know that in 25 you've got some options there. I mean, obviously, you've got Ryan Montgomery out of Findlay. 26. One of the better quarterbacks in the nation is like my neighbor, like legitimately my neighbor here in Pickerington, Rocco Williams. His dad's watching. Hey, Steve, he's going to be really good. I mean, it's quarterback recruiting is where it's at. If we post a story about quarterback recruiting on Buckeye Huddle, I guarantee you it's going to get more views than most stories because everybody's enamored. The quarterback touches the ball pretty much on every offensive play unless you're running a wildcat. And it's just, it's the easiest position for everybody to kind of follow. Following offensive guard recruiting, not as exciting. Quarterback recruiting is fantastic. So, yeah, Matthew, he's certainly somebody on the list. I highly recommend keeping an eye on the Skull Session podcast that Mark Givler does. He certainly will answer questions there. And if you're not a member of Buckeye Huddle, Mark Givler is doing his all-day chat on Buckeye Huddle right now. No better place than to ask him directly what his thoughts on Aaron Noland are, where things stand with him. So if you're not a member, sounds like every reason to sign up right now. Give us a month and check it out. Ask Mark Givler about Aaron Noland and any other quarterback, any other recruiting question you may have. So again, another shameless plug. We're closing in on an hour, but I like to try and get through as many questions as I can. Again, we will be doing this again on Thursday. We're going to make this a little bit more of a regular thing for those who have joined us a little bit later. I've been very inconsistent with doing the Big Me Kickoff, extremely inconsistent. Turning over a new leaf, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Now, there may be a day here and there where it just can't happen, or I'll try to record it the night before with travel and things of that nature, but three shows a week taped, 2 shows live. Tuesdays and Thursdays seem to be the days that I will go live. We'll build up some regularity. I can't promise that I'm always going to go at 11, but I'm going to try and go at 11 on the live shows. I know that there's some other shows that go daily at 12, and I don't want to split viewers if I can avoid it. So I will, I'll go live at 11. That's going to be the goal. And hopefully we can double and triple and quadruple these numbers and get those super chats flowing. Probably haven't said anything all that impressive today. So I forgive everybody for no super chats at this point. But, I want to get their show blown up and to be able to be daily the way that Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning and the Buckeye Weekly podcast are. And then that way you know what you're going to be getting. And also keep writing the written stuff because I know not everybody watches the podcast. You guys do because you're here with me. But gotta try and do a little bit of everything here. Let me keep moving here. Philip, there's nobody I've watched a game with that's more rabid toward the television than my mother. So I get it. I guess that's back to Sue's comment about I love when trolls want to argue with me because I'm a chick and they think I don't know football. It's funny because I certainly know through the industry a lot of women who are big football fans, and going out in a group setting and hearing somebody trying to correct them and them just thoroughly dismantling every thought and belief that they have because they know the game better than the guy that tried to correct them is hilarious. And to Philip's point, it's one of those things. I've gone and watched games, not Ohio State games. I'm generally busy, but gone and watched games with friends and their families, and grandma in the back is by far the most vocal person who's cussing at the officials and cussing at the play calling and everything else. So I love it. It's nothing else like it. Let me Keep going here. Doug, the rotation worked when we had better players. Jalen Holmes didn't get tons of snaps, but made an NFL roster and got playing time. I don't disagree, Doug. I don't disagree. You sit there and you look at the teams with Jalen Holmes and Taquan Lewis and there were a lot of guys there, but I think that they're rotating even more. I think that they're going deeper in the rotation and yeah, there I think there were some recruiting misses. I think there were. You're not going to hit 100% of the time. That's just not how it works. We talk about 20, 60, 20. 20% are going to be stars, 20% are going to just not really ever surface, and it's what you do with the 60%. There have been some situations where guys have come in big on hype and just haven't necessarily been able to put it together. So I would like, I mean, I'm not saying that I want to see them say, all right, well, we're only going to play four ends and we're going to play, three techs and a pair of ones. And that's, come hell or high water, that's who we're riding with. But with that being said, I think that they still need to tighten it up a little bit. That's just me. What do I know? Ben Higgins. I don't know how much Zach Harrison loves football. I think he might get drafted pretty high second round and then flame out pretty quick. Zach is an interesting guy. He hated his recruitment, and I think that a lot of people felt that maybe he was dispassionate because he hated his recruitment. No, he just hated being called all the time. He just hated all of that. I remember talking to him at Big Ten Media Days, just off the record. I mean, nothing critical. I'm not breaching any confidences here. And I was laughing and I was like, I can't believe that they got you up here talking, to the media, could get you on the phone as a recruit. And he's like, yeah, I really hated my recruiting. I was like, well, we're going to get to talk to you all the time now, right? He's like, well, don't count on it. I mean, he's just not a big talker when it comes to that media setting. That doesn't mean that he doesn't talk in the locker room and talk to his guys and everything else. There was a player that I felt that I kind of felt the way that Ben's talking, and that was Mike Adams, the offensive tackle. I felt that he was somebody who football found him more than him finding football. And that's not to say that Mike Adams wasn't a good football player. I mean, he ended up going on and playing with the Steelers and everything else. I mean, obviously had to deal with some injuries, et cetera, et cetera. But with Zach, I think Zach really does like football. I don't think it's all as encompassing. I don't think he's the guy that's going to be, if given the opportunity to go and read a book or get cultured or something, that he's going to sit there and be like, and hell with that, I got to go lift more. But I think Zach's going to do everything that it takes and then some to be successful. What that translates to in the NFL, I don't know. I mean, I've certainly seen a lot of guys that have been like, that's a can't miss guy. That's a can't miss guy. And they miss. And conversely, I've seen guys that have been like, what the hell are they thinking taking that guy? And they go on and have a long and prosperous career. So it's hard to tell. What do you look like when football becomes your full-time job? Because we say what you will about college football and okay, we can only work with you X amount of hours a week, but the expectation is you're going to be around the Woody all the time and independent film study and everything else. When it's your job, it's different. There's no, you're not having to take online classes or in-person classes. You're not you're a grown up. You're a grown up. You've got legitimate bills and things like that. It's different. So I think that plays a part in it too when it becomes your full-time job. And I think at some point that does expose players who aren't really passionate about it when it becomes everything to them. So I don't know. We'll see. Buckeye Gordon saying hello. Go Bucks. Hey, Buckeye Gordon, thanks for joining us. We're getting toward the end of the show, but as I've said, we will start doing live shows here on the Big Me Kickoff Tuesdays and Thursdays, barring travel or other circumstances that are out of my control. Plan is to go 5 days a week, start bringing some guests on as well. But want to get this show built up, so be sure to let your friends know, especially those who who generally frequent podcasts that we're doing this more on the regular. And I think that once we get a couple, 3 weeks into this, that we're going to see a lot more people here. El Suzabo, does UGA remain preseason number one with the loss of Monken and a new quarterback? Well, we already knew they were going to need a new quarterback, so that shouldn't matter. The loss of Monken, I think, is important, but I don't think you're going to see anybody's like, well, I really need to revote this. Right now we haven't necessarily had the preseason poll. We've had the way too early polls. I look at everything out there. Georgia's defense is still going to be nasty. I think Georgia's still probably my number one going into the season. I mean, who are the next 3 or 4 teams there? I think it's Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama. Those are the teams that are right there as well. What has Ohio State done in the time that we learned that Monken left to go to the Ravens? What has Michigan done? What has Alabama done? I mean, Alabama's gone and made 2 coordinator hires that a lot of people are looking kind of cross-eyed at because they're not so sure about them. So unless something major happens, I have a hard time moving the defending national champions down from number one when they're returning as much as they are, especially on defense. It's not like they're having to sit there and pick between Joe Boserman and Joe Boserman at quarterback. And I only use that name since somebody else did. And Joe's going to find me one day and he's going to kick my ass. I'm sure of it. I'm going to get a little more selective here as we're an hour and 5. I want to get done here soon. JJ says, I don't think we make the playoffs this season. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, a lot of football to be played. There are a lot of top programs are missing some pieces. But with that being said, get through and you navigate your schedule, and that's a big if. But if you get through and navigate your schedule, it's hard to keep you out. But here in the last year of the 4-team playoff, I'm going to make a prediction here. I think it's going to be a lot harder for a non-name brand team to make this playoff, being the last 4. Well, you'll be there next year. Don't worry about it. I think that this is a year that you're going to see 4 blue blood programs in the playoffs. I think there's going to be less concern about pissing off constituencies. I think that this is going to be an interesting year in where the playoffs go. Now, if the Pac-12 produces a undefeated team and it's not USC, let's just say it's Oregon, and the Big 12 produces an undefeated team and it's not Texas or OU, you're still going to have a hard time not putting those teams out there. But I think we're going to see a lot of cannibalization. I think that certainly in the Big 12 we're going to see, with Texas and OU still there and the 4 new teams coming in from the American, I think we're going to see that league eat itself up. I'm not convinced that USC is going to be able to play championship caliber defense. So I think we're going to see the SEC in the Big 10, and maybe Clemson's back. Clemson goes out and gets Garrett Riley as its new OC. We know Cade Klubnik's going to be the quarterback at this point. There's not a competition going on there. I think Clemson could get back into the mix, but I think we're looking at a really finite number of teams that are truly, truly in the mix based on 0 games being played. Now, we fall in love with teams all the time. Hello, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is always preseason ranked so high, everything else, and then they fall apart. But I think that, I think it's going to be the same list of usual suspects. But, when it comes to Ohio State, I've had people come up to me. It's like, this is a 10-2. This is a 9-3 type of season. I hope not. I want to go to the playoffs. I have a good time covering those games. But, I can't predict. I mean, game 4 at Notre Dame is going to be a big challenge. You end up getting Wisconsin, year 1 of Luke Fickell. What is that going to look like? You have to play Michigan at Michigan. What does Penn State look like with Drew Allar? Maryland is bringing back Talia Tagovailoa. I mean, this is not going to be a layup for Ohio State, So you sit there, you look at UGA. UGA is going to have its challenges too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have it in terms of what its non-conference is. I mean, I know that Georgia Tech's on there. I'm trying to remember what else. I don't have the schedule handy. But is UGA going to be able to go undefeated and then win in the Big 12 in the SEC championship game against presumably Alabama? What does the Tennessee game look like for UGA? I mean, everybody's going to have some pitfall there that they're going to have to navigate, and it'll be interesting. Numbers are dying down a little bit, and that's fine. As I said, I want to get close here to the end. So many great questions that I would love to be able to get to. Let me get here with Ralph Peck. I'm not sold on. I'm assuming that's Knowles. I think you got lucky this year, and he had some pretty good players returning. Of course, they're going to be better on defense this year. I sit there and I look at the situation. Let's start in the middle with linebackers. Steele and Tommy are back. We know what the linebacker position is going to look like. Let's go to corner. I mean, you've still got Denzel Burke. You've got Jordan Hancock. You bring in the kid from Davison Igbinosun. You go to safety. You bring in Jihad Carter, but you've got some guys that are steady there. Where does Sonny Styles get into the mix? What does defensive line look like? Where's there? I mean, you bring back Tuamoloau, you bring back Sawyer, you bring back Tyleek, you bring back Mike Hall. You've got some guys there. You've got some young guys. Caden Curry, we talked about him earlier on the show. What do you get there? I think in some ways you take some step forwards in defense because everybody's had a year in the defense. I think you take some step forwards because I think you've seen what some of the limitations are with the defense. And I think you take some step forwards because hey, not as much cover zero in pressure situations like that. But I don't know. What do I know? Brad Smith, undersized Northwestern DL pushed OSU O-line around all game. Happened in other games too. Even when OSU O-line was winning line of scrimmage, they stopped running like usual. Again, i.e. Michigan. That Northwestern game is such an outlier. I agree, Brad, but it's an outlier because it was run first, run second, run third. I mean, it was horrible out there in terms of the weather conditions. But the line did get pushed around, but there was no real threat of throwing the ball. So it was what it was. The point I'm going to get to is your last point about stop running the ball. And I do get upset about that as an observer. But with that being said, Ohio State was so decimated at running back, though I don't know why Dallin Hayden didn't play. And maybe one day I'll get a straight answer from somebody. Whether or not I'll be able to repeat it, I don't know. But it was a game of where does Ohio State stop running the ball if it has either, not both, either Trevion Henderson or Mayan Williams at 70%? I don't know. We have seen the tendency. We've seen the tendencies there to get away from the run. And, just it kind of is what it is. I think one of the biggest things that I want to see this year for Ohio State is the ability to convert 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 with the run. And I think it's going to be, I want to see if whoever it is, Brown or McCord, will line up under center in those types of situations. Pat Mahomes lining up under center on those 3rd and 4th in a football to gain, those things worked every single time. And I'm not saying that either of these guys are going to be Pat Mahomes, but let me throw this out at you as I wrap up. Let's say McCord wins the job. Let's say it's McCord. Why can't Devin Brown, if you sit there and you line up under center on 4th and inches, everybody knows that it's like 98% that you're going to just run it. It's QB keeper right up the gut. So if you have your bulldozer quarterback that you're going to do that with, who cares if the opponent knows what it is? Our guys are better than your guys, and we're going to prove it, and we're going to get a yard and a half here and keep the chains moving. But then again, you can still do that with whoever your starter is. I mean, maybe that, again, that wasn't CJ's game, but I think that that's important. And the arguments made, well, we don't practice under center. Well, practice under center. Problem solved. The end. But, I am not whatever in 6 like Ryan Day is as a head coach in college football. I certainly don't have that fat check that any of those coaches do. So what do I know? I'm just a sort of humble podcast host. So take it for what it is. Um, yes, Sue, I am way behind. At some points, maybe I need to have a producer when I'm doing my solo shows. It's just one of those things of you get off onto a certain conversation and that's where you are. Jay Moore asking who's the breakout players this year. I think somebody like Caden Curry could be that. Could be that. I mean, the big thing is that in terms of being a breakout player, I think you need to find a position to where you can get on the field. It's all well and good to be a great running back if you're not going to be able to pass up Trevion and Mayan and Chip and Dallin. And I know Ohio State didn't recruit a scholarship running back in this class. I'm just using it as an example. Ohio State doesn't run 21 personnel, doesn't run 2 backs, 1 tight. They run 11 or 12. You're not going to have an opportunity really to get out there. I'm going to say that it's going to be I think it's going to be kind of a newcomer of the year. How about one of the freshman wide receivers, whether it's Carnell Tate or Brandon Ennis? I think that there's going to be a big opportunity there with none of the 22 kids commanding much playing time. So I think some of these 23 receivers could step up into a big role. On the defensive side, I want to see Sonny Styles play more, but how about Kai Stokes? We saw a little Kai Stokes. We saw some good. We saw some bad. Can he step into one of those roles? Can one of the young defensive linemen step into one of those roles? How about a true freshman like Caden McDonald, the big one tech out of Georgia? Is he somebody that can come out and do that? He's different than anybody Ohio State has on its roster. I mean, they have other one techs, but this kid could be a 0. I mean, he could line up right over the center. I mean, he's different. So, but you just don't know how. I mean, they're going to all be drinking from a fire hose. Everybody who gets in here, whether you're from 5 miles away or 5,000 miles away, you're going to be homesick. But I think let's get through spring and see what some of these guys look like. And again, you're not really playing real football when we're there. But an interesting question and something I'll work with on the guys. Let me just see if there's anything else. Alex Martin. Mine is a short yardage downhill guy. Can't run. Not a back. Short, tough yards. For mine, our backs are listed from best to 4th best. Dallin, Chip, TC, and Evan. And sorry I left Evan off the list with him being injured at this point. Well, where's Trevion on that list? Where's Mayan? But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. They've got a room full of guys there. They certainly could we see Chip move back to linebacker if he can't find a path to the field? Does he sit there and does he get the Cade Stover treatment of one position to another to another to another? I don't know. Alex follows back with Dallin is leaps and bounds the total back on the team, not a question. I remember when Dallin was recruited, and there were a lot of people who were like, I'm not so sure about this guy. I'm like, just wait. I mean, even a couple of riders that I knew, and I'm not going to out them because that's not fair. But they're like, I think that he certainly fills a need, but I don't know if he's ever going to see it at Ohio State. At Maryland, he ran very well. And I think that if the line can do a little bit more in terms of opening up holes and you're not getting contacted at the line of scrimmage or a yard behind the line of scrimmage, you get an opportunity to make a football move. I think Dallin is really good back. I think that if Trevion gets a little bit more decisive and is a little less hopping around, I think Trevion's good. I like Mayan in terms of what Mayan does. I agree with Alex to a point that Mayan is not going to be a home run hitter, but I think he's more than a fullback playing running back, in my opinion. Looking back at his list, he's got Chip too. I need to see more out of Chip at the position. I don't know if I have a strong enough sample size at Ohio State to give an opinion on there. TC, we saw so little of TC before he got hurt. Yeah, we saw that one great run in garbage time That's fine. And we haven't really seen Evan. I mean, just honestly, we haven't seen Evan. So that'll be something we'll be following come spring. How the backs look. Alex, we haven't had a nasty head-to-head smasher like Chip in decades. Zach Boren was last, but Zach was a fullback, and then he moved to linebacker. Obviously, you need the intimidation factor on the field against defenses. I think you need to sit there and hit somebody and make them respect the run. I think that's the case. I mean, for sure. Ben is. I'm not going to post it. Ben is not sure about. Well, I will post it. Whatever. We're having fun because Alex took it in stride. Yeah, or you Skip Bayless's burner account. Alex says no. All right. I know I missed a lot of questions. The good news is I will be back on Thursday. We will fire this up. Unfortunately, you'll have to ask these questions again. Let's shoot for 11 a.m. Eastern. So now you know. I will promote it. Hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Subscribe to the channel. Check us out on BuckeyeHuddle.com. Give us a view there. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon as well. But until then, have a wonderful Tuesday, a happy Valentine's Day. Wish your loved ones a happy Valentine's Day. I'm cooking steaks tonight and baked potatoes. A lot cheaper to do that than go out tonight. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful day. And until then, I will see you guys very soon.